$100 million fine is apparently a blow that McLaren can absorb. The damage to their integrity is far more fundamental. After the breathtaking events of Paris on Thursday, the fresh air of Spa is very welcome indeed. Formula One returns to this great circuit for today's qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix. Good afternoon. The word Spa suggests healing powers, but after the spying scandal, it's going to take a lot more than a weekend in the beautiful Ardennes to bring Formula One back to full fitness. But at least it's a start at the end of a quite extraordinary week, Mark. What did you make, first of all, of the verdict in Paris on Thursday and the amazing penalty imposed on this team here?
I thought it was actually very harsh in terms of monetary terms. $100 million is a figure that we've not had recorded of anything to do with F1 before. Only budgets, not as a fine. But the bigger problem for the team is no championship points for this year. So constructors' title was out of the question. And it really does put a lot of stress and strain on them for next season.
$100 million, it makes you wonder how any organisation, let alone a sporting organisation, a sports team, can absorb that kind of a fine.
That's going to be very difficult. It's going to be difficult to try and understand as well to the sponsors what the situation is and what it holds for them in the future. But I think it's offset against World Championship points for this season, so the number will actually get reduced somewhat, but it's still a significant figure.
$100 million, that's £50 million. That was the fine imposed on Thursday, but as Mark said, McLaren also kicked out of the Constructors' Championship, and after the 1-2 that McLaren recorded at the Italian Grand Prix, and although there is a mathematical possibility of BMW catching them, Ferrari are effectively Constructors' Champions. The important concession that the World Motorsport Council made on Thursday was to allow Lewis Hamilton.
FIA say they have the smoking gun, proof that McLaren has used the Ferrari secrets to make their own cars go faster. The new evidence was in emails between test driver Pedro de la Rosa and race driver Fernando Alonso discussing Ferrari's weight distribution, their flexible wings, braking system and pit stop strategy, and then how to use that information to their advantage. Lewis Hamilton was not party to these emails and was not called before the council. Ron Dennis insists there was never any Ferrari intellectual property actually on the McLaren car. The Ferrari, who even pulled Ross Brawn out of his sabbatical to support their case, are satisfied that McLaren had been punished. Max Mosley offered Alonso immunity from prosecution in return for handing over his emails. They couldn't kick him out of the Drivers' Championship, so the World Council imposed the biggest fine in the history of the sport, £50 million. That's nearly a third of McLaren's annual budget. They are considering an appeal. What exclusion from the Constructors' Championship means that next year McLaren will have smaller garages down the end of the pit lane behind other teams with no points, such as Spiker and Toro Rosso. And there's a twist for 2008. The FIA have required McLaren to give them the designs for next year's car so they can pick them over and say if they contain any Ferrari information. But the most explosive thing we've learned this weekend is that it was Ron Dennis himself who tipped off the FIA as to the existence of Alonso and De La Rosa's emails, an honest confession that's cost him a championship. The rumour is that Dennis was made aware of these emails' existence during an argument with Fernando Alonso in Hungary, following the infamous pit lane hold-up. The team will continue to support both Alonso and Hamilton's efforts on track towards the Drivers' World Championship. But it's clear the relationship between Ron Dennis and Fernando Alonso has completely, possibly irreparably, broken down.
I think if anything it makes us more determined.
All this continues to be the role of Fernando Alonso in the whole crisis for McLaren. It would be astonishing to think that he had used the presence of these emails to try to engineer a better position for himself within the team.
I'd be amazed, Steve, to see Alonso take that stance and actually try and go to the team principal and say, look, I've got the information, I'm prepared to use it if you don't support me. That's a very difficult thing to do and difficult to actually come back into the team and try and get support now that it's all come out. I'm also amazed that they are giving him the support and saying that, we're still backing both of our drivers. But let's wait and see. Let's see where the championship ends up.
But now Ron Dennis has come across as the man who went straight to the FIA as soon as this incriminating evidence was known. This is what the
kind of be mad at him now.
Max Mosley had to say just a few minutes ago.
What actually happened was, not at the Nürburgring, but in Hungary, on the morning of the Hungarian Grand Prix, Ron rang me and he said, I just had Alonso in the motorhome, and he says he's got information, he's threatening to give it to the Federation. So I said, what did you say, Ron? I said, well, go on and hand it over. I said, Ron, you said exactly the right thing. And then Ron said, but there isn't any information. So I said, well, so it's an empty threat. Yes, a completely empty threat. There's no information, there's nothing to come out. I can assure you that if there was something, Max, I would have told you. Now, this was a week after looking me in the eye in the World Council and telling me there was absolutely nothing wrong and everybody had done exactly as they should do. So I believed him. I've known Ron 40 years. Very difficult for me when somebody I've known 40 years looks me in the eye and says, Max, I'm telling the truth with complete sincerity. And you believe him. And it was only when I got the list from the Italian police, 323, I think, SNS phone calls going over a 3-month period between Cotton and Stepney. I realized there has to be more to this. That wasn't, don't get 300 messages arranging a visit to Honda. This is something serious. At which point, I sat down and wrote the letters to drivers, and then the rest is history.
And that was the president of the FIA, and you could deduce from that that this still has the potential to become enormously damaging for Formula One, and very personal indeed.
It seems personal, doesn't it? And, you know, definitely a situation now where we've got the team principal of McLaren saying that there's no more information that I know of, and he's saying that to the FIA president. The FIA president is now basically calling him a liar. That's how it seems to me. And it's going to be a standoff again on what goes on from this point. And as you say, Steve, that information has just come to us in the last few minutes. Another turnaround in this sport.
What is McLaren's reputation, do you feel now? What is Ron Dennis's reputation in this sport now?
You know, Ron Dennis is held in high regard by many people.
Not me.
Bit of integrity there.
Although slightly higher than you, unfortunately.
Outstanding team, and he's built the team up from nothing more or less into what it is today. But this thing is going a little bit deep, and it's going on a bit too far. And, you know, the biggest concern, again, is don't tarnish the sport. It's a great sport.
Okay, we'll have a lot more on this during the course of the weekend, in particular during our build-up to tomorrow's race, when we hope to hear in some detail from Ron Dennis himself. But Formula One returns here to Spa, and this is the kind of